Hi everybody, Miss Ovadia here, and I'm here with my younger son.
Alex.
And anything you'd like to say to our studio audience?
I'm 11 and no.
Okay, very talkative today. So today we're going to be going back and taking another look at India. Where we left off is Gandhi was attempting to gain independence for India from Great Britain. And today is the lesson in which Gandhi will succeed and India will gain its independence. And this is a period in history, India's history, that we know of. It's called partition. And Alex, you were telling me that partition was one of your vocabulary words last week. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I like to think of partition in terms of hair. Right? I'm a big hair person. So you'll notice here's Alex's beautiful hairstyle. If you put your head down, up a little bit, you can see that this is just one giant alpaca poof. There is no part in his hair. Would you agree? That would look a little weird. Now, you tell me, do I have a part in my hair?
Yep.
Can you show everybody where it is?
Right.
Oh,
down here.
Right down there. Yeah. So if your hair is parted, what does that mean in your own words?
It means there's a divide in it.
Oh, yeah. So it's like divided, right? Some of it goes this way and some of it goes that way. Alex, you have no part in your hair, right? Your hair is all united into one fluffy alpaca poof. So think about your definition. Do you remember what partition means?
A divide or something to separate.
So here's my question, putting Alex on the spot. If India is about to experience a period in history called partition, what's going to happen to it?
It's going to change, and there's going to be sort of like something is going to end and a new thing is going to start.
Think more concretely, right? It's going to actually...
Oh, divide.
It's going to divide, right? So we're going to be left with India, and then not just India, but India and Pakistan on one side and Bangladesh to the other.
Yep.
So you can go do your reading now.
Okay.
I'm going to finish my video. Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. So we're talking about partition today, and here's the handout that you're going to be using. I'll make sure that this is posted on Google Classroom. And away we go. So, partition of India. Partition takes place in 1947. And as I already said, partition is going to happen after India gains its independence from Great Britain. So let's go back a little bit. A couple of things that I'd like you to know. Just a refresher that in 1947, the year of India's independence, we know the three most important religious groups in India. The majority of people are Hindus. That's the area that you see on the map in red. The biggest minority are Muslims, and they are located in green. And then gray, the gray areas, are a whole bunch of different religions, but that's mostly where Sikhs live. And I want to point out in particular the big gray blob, let me point to it, right over here, okay? So now let's take a look here at some before and after maps. You can see here that Pakistan was created on August 14, 1947. It was the first Islamic republic in the world. And Pakistan, in case you forgot, is this area right over here. Okay, you'll see Bangladesh is going to be formed over here. So, hey, if we go back, right, wow, what do you notice about the area that's going to become Pakistan? It is predominantly Muslim. Same thing is true of Bangladesh. So it looks like partition is going to have something to do with religion. The other thing I wanted to point out on this slide is that the Punjab region is the region kind of right on that border between India and Pakistan. And that region is going to be split in half. So when partition happens, it'll run right through the region of Punjab. Part of it will be in India, part of it will be in Pakistan. The Sikhs that I mentioned before live mostly in the Punjab region. So think about this. If you are a Sikh, right, and maybe you live, in the part that is now India, right, maybe over by the city of Amritsar, how is your life going to be different knowing that, loads of other Sikhs, your family members and friends, are now living on the Pakistani side? maybe in the city of Lahore. Your life could be really different. I mean, maybe like, you know, mom and dad live on the Pakistani side and you live on the India side. How are you going to visit them regularly? Are you going to need to, are you going to be able to cross over the border or not? So partition is really going to disrupt the lives of Sikhs. Okay, so formal definition of partition. It's the division of British Indian Empire, of the British Indian Empire into India and Pakistan. We're not going to be so concerned with Bangladesh in this lesson, but I do want you to be aware that they will eventually become their own country as well. All right, here's the key stuff. Gandhi was totally opposed to partition, right? Completely against it. He considered it like one of the most important, biggest disappointments of his life because he was a nationalist. He believed in Indian unity, whether you were a Hindu or a Muslim. So he was just deeply, deeply disappointed and hurt, felt that it was a personal failing that Indians would not stay united as one country, that they would choose or that they would split, with some being in India and some being in Pakistan. So there we go. That ism, the one where you really love your country. Like I said, Gandhi loved India. He was a patriot and a nationalist. Okay, so again, he doesn't want the two major religious groups to split into two countries. All right, I'm going to introduce you to two folks right now. This guy right here is named Nehru. I'm not going to tell you much about him. All I'm going to tell you is this. He was Gandhi's protege, like his best student, right? So if you have, say, a mentor, right, then you would be that mentor's protege. And he was the leader of a group called the Indian National Congress. And this was primarily a Hindu group. That's all I'm going to tell you about Nehru. The other guy I'm going to introduce you to is this guy, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And the only thing I'm going to have you write down, the only thing I'm going to tell you about him is that he is the leader of a group called the Muslim League. And so now let me go to the handout for a sec. And so that information that I gave you about Nehru can go up here in this box. And the information I gave you about Jinnah, about being a leader of the Muslim League, can go here in this box. What I want you to do at this point is pause the video and make two predictions. Is Nehru going to support partition? Why or why not? And is Jinnah going to support partition? Why or why not? So I would pause the video here. Okay, see if you can come up with what you think each one is going to think about partition. Based on what I've told you, you should be able to figure it out. Couple reminders, Hindus are the majority, Muslims are the minority, and Gandhi was opposed to partition. Okay, so here's what we're going to do in this next section. Hopefully you made your predictions. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at two different primary sources. One is from Nehru and one is from Jinnah. And so what I'll do is I'll pull up the handout. We've got two documents here. And what I'm going to do is read them to you, okay? And that should make it easier for you to do what's next. If we look at what's next, here's what you need to do. For this first document, I've given you the argument or the thesis. Nehru is going to say that India should not be divided into two countries. And hopefully that matches your prediction. What you will need to do is come up with evidence to support the thesis. And I'm going to have you put it in this box right over here. You should have a minimum of 3 different pieces of evidence that you're going to put in this box. Then I will read the document by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Same thing. This argument or thesis is that Muslims must have their own independent country. And in this box, you're going to give me at least 3 reasons why he believes that is true. So let me read these out loud. If you don't need me to read them out loud and you want to skip ahead a little bit, that's fine with me. Document A, Nehru. This passage below is an excerpt from the book The Discovery of India by Nehru, published in 1946. Nehru was India's first prime minister and a member of India's Hindu Congress during pre-independence. Nehru was actively involved in India's independence movement, and he wrote the book between 1942 and 1945, when he was in prison for civil disobedience. Sounds like Gandhi. Here's the quote. Any division of India on a religious basis, as between Hindus and Muslims, as proposed by the Muslim League today, cannot separate the followers of these two principal religions of India, for they are spread out all over the country. Even if the areas in which each group is in a majority are separated, huge minorities belonging to the other group remain in each area. Other religious groups, like the Sikhs, are split up unfairly against their will and placed in two different states. In giving freedom to separate to one group, other groups are denied that freedom. If the economic aspects of separation are considered, it is clear that India as a whole is strong and more or less self-sufficient economic unit. If the division is made so as to separate the predominantly Hindu and Muslim areas, the Hindu areas will not be so hard hit. The Muslim areas, on the other hand, will be economically backward. Thus, the odd fact emerges that those who today demand separation will suffer the most from it. The astonishing fact remains that those who propose Pakistan or partition have consistently refused to define what they mean or to consider the implications of such a division. They move on the emotional plane only. It is difficult to imagine any free state emerging from such turmoil, and if something does emerge, it will be full of contradictions and insoluble problems. So again, this is Nehru's argument. He does not want India to be divided. He opposes partition, just like Gandhi. You need to come up with 3 reasons why, based on the document I just read. Now, Jinnah, the leader of the Muslim League, supported partition. So here's his document. The passage below is a speech by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was known as the founder of Pakistan. Jinnah served as president of the All India Muslim League from 1913 until Pakistan's independence on August 15, 1947. The speech became known as the Two Nations Speech and was delivered at the Muslim League's annual meeting in 1940. If the British government really wants to secure the peace and happiness of the people of this subcontinent, the only course open to us is to allow Hindus and Muslims separate homelands by dividing India into autonomous national states. It is extremely difficult to appreciate why our Hindu friends fail to understand the real nature of Islam and Hinduism. They are not religions in the strict sense of the word, but are in fact different and distinct social orders. It is a dream that the Hindus and Muslims can ever evolve a common nationality. This misconception of one Indian nation has gone far beyond the limits and is the cause of most of our troubles, and will lead India to destruction if we fail to revise our notions in time. The Hindus and the Muslims belong to 2 different religious philosophies, social customs, and literature. They neither intermarry nor interdine together, and indeed they belong to 2 different civilizations, which are based mainly on conflicting ideas and conceptions. To yoke or join together 2 such nations under a single state, one as a numerical minority and the other as a majority, must lead to growing discontent and the final destruction of the government of such a state. Muslim Indians cannot accept any constitution that will lead to a Hindu majority government. The Muslims are a nation according to any definition of a nation, and they must have their homelands, their territory, and their state. We wish to live in peace and harmony with our neighbors as a free and independent people. So again, Jinnah totally wants partition. Come up with 3 reasons why he believes that is so. And now, let's go back to the presentation. So, now that you hopefully understand some of the differences between these 2, Suffice it to say that the Radcliffe Line is going to be that line that divides India and Pakistan. The British decide, even though Nehru and Gandhi are opposed to it, that India should be divided when the British grant India independence. And so India and Pakistan will be divided based on this red Radcliffe Line. Now you can see on the eastern side that Bangladesh is not yet going to be called Bangladesh. It will be called East Pakistan. And later, East Pakistan will go to war with Pakistan, and that's how they become Bangladesh. But regardless, let's talk about this line. The line is named after this guy, Sir Cyril Radcliffe. Now, I don't know about you, but he doesn't look Indian to me, or Pakistani, or Bangladeshi, and he's not. He's British. Sure, I can divide 170,000 square miles of territory with 88 million people in 5 weeks with out-of-date maps and inaccurate census data. No problem. I might divide villages down the middle. I might even divide houses. Your bedrooms will be in India and your kitchen will be in Pakistan. Wonder how long the line is at that border crossing. So long story short, the Radcliffe Line perhaps was not the best way to divide India into these new countries, because you can see that Radcliffe was not working with great information. And what I put in his mouth here actually did happen, where villages and houses were divided in half by the Radcliffe Line. So part of people's villages or even individual homes were located in Pakistan, while the other part was located in India. When partition was announced, basically the British government said, look, we're leaving. And if you want to live in India, get yourself to India. And if you want to live in Pakistan, get yourself to Pakistan. India is going to be primarily a Hindu country. And Pakistan is going to be primarily a Muslim country. So when partition was announced, people had to make sometimes a really, a life-altering choice. Which side of the line are they going to live on? And of course, this is going to be particularly hard for Sikhs, since their primary communities are going to be split in two. What actually happens during the period of partition? This is happening in the summertime in 1947. Temperatures average between 100 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Most people are poor, so they can't afford to fly or have an air-conditioned car or an air-conditioned train. So most people who decide they're going to move from one side to the other are going to be doing so on foot, and they're going to be carrying all of their possessions with them. There would be lines of people migrating that are over 25 miles long in each direction. Over 7 million people are going to migrate in each direction. Most of them will do so on foot. And the average journey took about anywhere from a couple of miles to 250 miles. Can you imagine if we were going to walk from Syracuse to New York City, about that distance, and we're going to walk down Highway I-81 in 105-degree heat, and we're going to carry all of our possessions with us. Oh, and on the other side of the divider, we're going to see an equal number of people heading from New York to Syracuse. And now we've learned to think of those people on the opposite side of the divider as our enemy. Can you see where tempers might really flare up? And it could result in some serious violence? Well, that's exactly what's going to happen. What you see here on the map just gives you some estimates of how many people moved in each direction. So how many people became refugees in India, and how many people became refugees in West Pakistan and East Pakistan. We're talking about, like I said, millions of people on the move. And if we're thinking about millions of people on the move, I'm reminded of one of our enduring issues, which is people and migration. Partition resulted in tremendous chaos and violence. As you can see here, the brand new independent governments did not know how to deal with so many migrants moving into their countries. There was violence and murder carried out on both sides of the border. And as a result of partition, over 1 million people died. Some because of, just trying to manage such a long journey on foot in the heat. Others, unfortunately, from violence. And many people who died were Sikhs because they were trapped in that region where you've got millions of Hindus and Muslims crossing right through their villages. After partition, we have these 2, or really 3 countries, India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. But that, again, I'm just going to focus on India and Pakistan. Things are not like all solved once partition is over and everyone's moved to the country in which they want to live. There are several problems that continue to this day. One of those problems has to do with the region of Kashmir. Kashmir is a region in the Himalayas, so up in the mountains, and India and Pakistan have been fighting to control this region ever since partition occurred in 1947. In fact, as recently as last February of 2019, 40 Indian troops were killed by a suicide bomber. The suicide bomber was Pakistani. The 2 sides have been fighting and fighting, and one reason why they're fighting is because of water. Think about what happens, right? If you live in a region with big, tall mountains that get lots of snow, in the springtime that snow melts and becomes, people's drinking water. So whoever controls this mountainous region is going to have more control over that drinking water. So that's a major reason why the 2 sides have been fighting. Here's a picture from that the violence that occurred in Kashmir in February of 2019. Another major problem between India and Pakistan. Well, rather than tell you the problem, let's see if you can figure out the cartoon. Here we have a skeleton, the angel of death, not sure, who's taking part in my favorite activity, knitting, making a cashmere with a K, get it, sweater, to keep me warm during nuclear winter. Well, look at his knitting needles. Why are the stakes in Kashmir higher than ever? What do India and Pakistan have? Of course, now they have nuclear weapons. So the 2 sides don't get along. They've been fighting a border war over Kashmir since 1947, and both sides have nuclear weapons. So this is an incredibly dangerous geopolitical zone in the world. All right, so we're going to end our presentation there. If you have questions, let me know. So those should hopefully cover your notes on partition. Let me just take one more look at the note sheet. Got the Radcliffe line, partition, post-partition problems. Yeah, I think we're in good shape. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.